Thank you, Andy. When he when he asked me to do this, he told me that there was a need for industry heavyweights to support the event. Clearly, somebody at the organising committee took the request too literally and invited me along to speak. However, please believe me when I say I take the word expert very relative, especially when stood in front of a room full of people who know more about production and manufacturing than I could ever hope to. That said, I'll do my best to get through the next few minutes as quickly and as smoothly as possible, and I can only apologise in advance about my presentation because I only Googled it this morning. It's clear that next to the people who make sealed units, windows and doors, the machinery the machinery that you use if you manufacture is a vital part of the process. When I Googled the presentation, I happened across a few articles from tabloid and broadsheet sectors who posed rather a cynical question, which I'd like to pose to you. Is triple glazing just about selling more replacement windows? Yes or no? Balance in the window industry, I've never heard of it. So, is thermal performance key? We now know from Mark and Steve's presentation that a triple glazed unit's thermal performance only starts to outperform that of a double glazed unit when the overall cavity width takes the triple unit beyond 36 mm. And apologies to those guys because I've nicked their slides. Preparation. What do manufacturers of windows have to face when considering triple glazed units? Triple glazed units less than 36 mm, virtually no extra consideration has to be given to the manufacturing of windows, frames, sashes when the overall width of triple glazed units is less than 36 mm. However, there will be some consistent themes that you've heard today and that I'll go through in my presentation. I'm sure Steve will pick up on when we consider some of the implications. Triple glazed units more than 36 mm. At this point, 70 mm suites, as Mark alluded to, become impractical to hold a 36 mm plus triple glazed unit due to the space constraints and the placement of the glazing beads. Which product has the most fabricators in the UK? Believe it or not, timber. There are more fabricators of timber windows by number than any other sector, but clearly PVCU takes a lion's share, aluminium and composite doors, and I have to thank Mr. Scott for that information, although he didn't actually allow me to use it. The impacts on production, PVC window production. Multiple production lines will be required if we're considering moving beyond 70 mm suites. Multiple production lines may be a requirement. Additional wear is common, the theme considering stock and storage. Saws will require additional profile related supports. Routing machines will need constant height adjustment, and therefore there may be a requirement to have multiple lines for routing. Most welding and cleaning lines can deal with 90 mm suites, although in most cases retooling and new support blocks will be a requirement. Extra reinforcement is a strong possibility throughout, as there is a requirement to support the extra weight through hinge points and friction stays. Hardware upgrades are being developed, so multiple stock, extra cost, the reconfiguration of production processes all need to be accounted for. And whilst many PVC systems can accommodate up to 36 mm units with a dedicated glazing bead, to achieve up to 48 mm triple requires a smart sash of circa 74 mm. Thank you for that, Duncan. The impacts on production for aluminium window. The majority of aluminium systems can already accommodate up to 46 mm triple glazing. Dedicated triple glazing beads will be required to accommodate the increase in unit size. The extra load from triple glazing will have an impact on the hardware specification. Friction hinges, heavy duty versions will be required, and due to the increase in weight, aluminium doors may require an additional hinge to be fitted. The impacts on timber production, one of the things that surprised me, the majority of timber triple glazed windows at this present time are currently manufactured outside of the UK. Now that might be from Southern Ireland or from obviously the continent of Europe, but I don't think there are probably, given the information that we've seen already, there's probably not that many timber manufacturers of windows in the room, so could be an opportunity. Additional stock holding impacts on timber sections, which good structural strength and low thermal conductivity for triple glazed products. There is a requirement for heavy duty friction hinges and to accommodate the extra weight, typically over 30 kilograms per metre squared, if you want to try and figure that one out. A timber window design to take a 40mm unit would need to be 90mm in depth, considerably adding to the overall weight of the product. To enhance the U value, 2 compression gaskets are required, and there are some milling variants that are required within the timber frame manufacturing process. The impact on doors or door manufacturing, the majority of existing composite door cassettes can already accommodate triple glazed units using an overall 24mm unit. Heavy duty door hinges accommodate up to 60 to 80 kilograms, so can cope with the extra weight that triple glazing poses. Patio and bifold doors are all about weight. Heavy duty gearing is necessary for triple glazing, plus dedicated glazing beads, as previously mentioned. Existing aluminium systems can accommodate up to 46mm units, whereas normal PVC patio and bifold doors accommodate 40mm. PVC patios only take up to 28mm units, so would currently not accommodate a thermally beneficial triple glazed unit. So the impacts on production. Glazing and logistics, as I said, the common theme here is probably cost, weight and the production control. Triple glazing is obviously heavier than double glazing. Mark alluded to the fact that if we go to 90mm suites, there's a 20% increase in the plastic, so a 20% increase in the weight. Safe working loads have to be respected through health and safety legislation, so the handling equipment that you would require, lifters, suction lifters, manipulators, gantry cranes, etc., become a requirement. Ancillary equipment like trolleys, transportation racks and even vehicles may need upgrading, all of which leads to a complete overhaul of the logistics operations and just to accommodate the increase in weight and space requirement. The impacts regarding production software, cutting and machining centres will need reprogramming for different suites of profile. New output files will be required for certain machining preps. Corner cleaners will need reprogramming. Programming to incorporate triple glazing bead will be required. Production software will need reconfiguring to accommodate multiple production lines where systems have specific range of triple glazing. So in conclusion, overall cavity width, I believe, is a major consideration and the impact it has to the production of windows and doors. If the overall cavity size stays relatively passive, then the impact can be reduced to just handling. However, if the need to move to wider profiles becomes necessary, then the accommodation could have substantial impacts on production and cost. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll pass you over to Steve Goble from Hegla UK, and he'll take you through the sealed unit manufacturing process.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was trying to work out how to start this conversation, so I was laying in bed very early Monday morning, worrying about standing here and thinking about the glass industry, as I always do. And I thought, in the time I've been in the industry, in the first 25 years, what has changed? Not a lot. Vertical IG lines probably came in, butyl. Some comedian put VAT on home improvements. And for a generation, you've been trying to get it off, so give up on that one. Then we moved towards document L. Once we got to document L, the glass no longer became something that kept the wind and rain out of the house. It was something that became integral to the window, and it's progressed further forward to the point where we are now, where we're basically talking about triple glazing. It's happening. You saw some of the companies in the poll. What are you making at the moment? Some of them are making quite a lot, but all are making some. Most are just dabbling in it, but now it's got to become serious. So the challenge is to make the same amount of sealed units a day in doubles or triples. Because to make triples is a lot more complicated and takes a lot more time. I just want to try and explain typically what the glass companies are. So it's mostly by output. A small company, say up to 200 sealed units a day, some form of cut-in, probably free-fall, simple IG line, and outsourced toughened glass. Medium-sized companies will say up to 800 sealed units a day, probably still free-fall cut-in, may have auto-loading, definitely have an IG line, possibly their own toughening plant, but may well still buy in external toughened. The large companies, they will have auto-loading, almost definitely, IG line, toughening plant, but probably multiples of each. They can all make triple units and have all got different challenges. Typical changes. The first item is actually not to do with production, it's just that you will have to purchase more raw materials, and more importantly, you're going to have to give higher credit to your customers. Not easy after a recession. Triple glazed units require higher accuracy. Cutting tables will have to cut square and accurate. Spacer saws will have to cut accurate to size. No burrs. The corner keys will have to fit, because what you can get away with a double glazed sealed unit, you cannot get away with a triple glazed sealed unit. Again, even with triple units, you've got to make the same amount of sealed units a day. You'll see the effect on IG lines a little bit later. You will have faults in glass. You will have to make remakes. The law of probability says you will make more remakes. But if you only make the same remakes, they're going to be more expensive. So big effect on profitability. Glass storage. As I said, document L was the first time we ended up with two different products. And progressively, there's been more and more product types that have come onto the market. These products need a bigger space to store. You're constantly changing glass types, and if we cut triples, we're going to be cutting 50% more glass. Okay, we're taking it to the nth degree, and we're not going to go 100% overnight. It's going to be progressive, but the biggest problem in 95% of glass companies in this country is there is no space. Most of the time, we can't even get the machines in the building, let alone find room for more glass and things like that. Glass cutting. We have moved to a wider range of products, which meant there are more runs of glass per day. When you have more runs of glass per day, you have less output. As we increase the more different products, we will also affect the yield. If we have bigger batches, the better. But we've got lots of smaller batches. Smaller batches will affect the yield on glass types. Surface sensitive glass. Triples, we now agree, will have two products that are surface sensitive, which need edge deletion. Edge deletion is already a slower process. Introducing the third piece of glass with edge deletion is going to slow the process every more. And remember, we have to make the same amount of sealed units a day. It's the thing you have to keep stressing. 50% more glass will be required to be stored per day if we go to 100% triples. More racks will be required to put the glass on, and more space required for work in progress. Let's assume that the centre pane is going to be toughened. Currently, roughly 50% of all sealed units are currently toughened. So if we go to 100% triple, we're going to need a 100% increase in toughened glass. Well, that'll be a miracle if we can do that. So that's a big problem. You're going to need more glass to be stored on more racks and more work in progress. And most toughening furnaces now, you can't move around it. Pardon. Can your IG line existing, or your IG exist? Can your existing equipment produce triple units? That's easier. Yes or no? Start now. Do I have to press? Yeah. Press now. Oh, it's going. Could 11% put their hands up and I'll come and see them next week?
Wait.
We will come and see them next week on alternate days. So, insulating glass lines. As we described the companies before, they'll all be able to make triple units, but there'll be different effects. Generally, on a vertical sealed unit line, when you make triples, you're going to make at least 40% less in the same time that you're making doubles. Could be worse than that, depends on the line. The sealed units will be heavier, which is a health and safety problem. Getting them off the line, if you can't get them off quick enough, that again will affect your output. So sucker lifting is probably going to be required. You're going to need more racks at the front and the end of the IG line and in dispatch. And conventional spacer will need twice as much work to make triple units. The only thing we're saving here is a piece of cheap float glass. Nothing else. We're putting more expensive glass in, and there's a hell of a lot of work put into it. Logistics, as we say, the sealed units are going to get heavier. You can see there roughly we go from 20 to 30 kilos. And this is a handleable side of glass. Once you get a big piece of glass, it's a big effect. The problem we've got now is we probably overload vehicles at the moment, or have the tendency or the possibility to overload. That's not going to happen in the future. You're going to need more space, not load capacity. You're going to be delivering more air, basically. And I think when Gaby speaks, you can see there's some examples she's got of jobs they've done. Summary of effects. Glass and conventional spacer will require more accuracy. This is really important. Glass stock will be required, higher value. More glass cutting, longer working hours, there's no choice. More toughened glass will be required. Longer working hours, buying more toughened. Is there sufficient glass to the market? More complicated sealed unit production. What I didn't mention was how complicated it is to actually cut 2 bits of float and put a piece of toughened in the middle. Don't underestimate how many times you're going to do that wrong. And Malcolm will talk much more about that, how you flow that around the factory to get those 2 bits of glass or 3 bits of glass together. More internal racks will be supplied, more space will be needed, and there'll be problems with deliveries. You will have to deliver a lot more times to the same customers. In my conclusion, I did have, it did say slash wrists, sell the business, retire, but I decided to take that out. So you have to look at your current production, assess what impact there will be, start planning now on processes and equipment, especially software. It's one of the most important things in the factory. And above all, after all we've talked about, get the right price for the product. It's not just a piece of glass that's missing. It's a lot more than that. Thank you very much, and I now pass on to Malcolm next.
Thanks, Steve. I'm very aware that there's only Gaby and I standing between you lot and lunch, so I won't be too long with this. I'd like to talk briefly about some of the IT issues that face IG manufacture, whatever software you might be using. Let's start with the basics. Can your software cope with specifying which pane is low E, which face is low E, and which pane is toughened? Might seem simple. Don't think it is. It might seem trivial and unimportant, but once you get to a shaped unit or a stepped unit, it becomes crucial. You can't rely on the guys on the line sorting out orientation. If you buy your toughened in, you've got exactly the same problem, but you've got to rely on somebody else getting it right. That tricky toughened centre pane. I'm going to assume for sake of argument that you are going to toughen the centre pane, otherwise you haven't really got a problem. If you toughen in-house, you need to cut it, get it arrest, toughened, and back in time to meet up with its partner pieces, which isn't trivial. If you can, you don't want to do a separate batch for your triple, because that's going to reduce your yield. You should try and integrate it in your current batch. I hope you can see that diagram okay. The blue arrows show the blue glass there going straight from cutting to sealing. The green arrows show the toughened glass being cut, arrest, toughened, and background. So that's your standard double glaze factory with a fairly smooth flow. If you're making a totally annealed unit, then the flow is pretty straightforward. The blue arrow there shows just goes from cutting straight to sealing, no real problems. If you're making a totally toughened unit, again, the green arrows, cut it, arrest it, toughen it, and it flows back. But what we want is a toughened unit, a toughened piece in the middle, and 2 bits of float either side. Those of you who already make combination units have got experience in this, and I don't wish to teach my betters how to suck eggs, but this is one of the options. So the blue arrows there, you could leave a gap in your trolley, have 2 bits of float, and leave a gap there in the middle for your toughened, and then wheel that trolley to the back of the furnace, put the piece of toughened in, and then wheel it to the line. The problem with that is you've got lots of half-empty slot carts running around the factory, and you might have a log jam at the back of your furnace. The advantage of this is everything is in the right place, the right orientation when you get it to the line. Another way of doing it is to put the piece 1 and 3 concatenated in the float trolley where the blue arrows go, and put the centre pieces in a trolley at the back of the furnace, and the 2 trolleys meet. The problem with that is the guy at sealing, and he needs to have his wits about him to get all the pieces from alternate trolleys. The advantage of that is you've got no half-full trolleys around the factory. So neither are ideal scenarios. One possible benefit of triple is that you might have bigger batches if you've got similar glass types, but if you've got more varied glass type, which is more probables, maybe a low iron, maybe an anti-condensation glass, your yield might suffer. So again, not ideal. However you choose to make your triple glazed units, you probably need to give some thought to sorting and racking. You probably want to make all of your triples together in one place, depending on the capacity and constraints of your sealing line, especially if your cavities are different, because that's going to give you a major headache. Obviously, it's not an easy thing to mix triple in with double in this kind of scenario, and you could probably do with some help with a capacity planning production software to show if we get an order for 150 triple glaze units tomorrow out of the blue, what's that going to do to our capacity? And most software has that kind of stuff in it. What I would suggest is you talk to your current software provider, and I think all of the UK software out there that is being sold at the moment can cope with triples adequately. If you've got older DOS legacy products, then you need to be looking at upgrading, I would think. But making a phone call to your software guys would be no harm at all. There's enough challenges without making your software one of the problems. I'll now pass you over to Gaby Mendham of Ecoglass.
Afternoon, everybody. Am I living the dream? Well, I'm not sure. I'll let you all decide. We're an independent IGU manufacturer, and we manufacture approximately 7,000 IGUs per week on a single shift. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We buy 60 tonnes of glass, which is 3 in-loaders minimum, and we have over 60 employees. Now, the biggest change for us will be the dramatic increase in the stocking levels of all IGU components. So I'd therefore like to ask a question. How much more raw material is needed to manufacture a triple glazed unit compared to a double glazed unit? Is it 1, 35%, 2, 60%, or 3, 90%? Please vote now. That's interesting, because based on cavity width, because they do alter in our industry, it's actually 90%, because you are just one sheet of glass away from making 2 units, remember. And if you imagine you take a 24mm double glazed unit and you then make a 44mm double glazed unit, you're actually adding 90% more in raw materials, but you'd be surprised how many people think it's just a third extra. So how will this impact on our business? Well, the necessity to purchase much bigger volumes of raw materials will either mean increase in stock holding areas or probably more frequent daily deliveries with the disruption that incurs. Bigger credit limits will be needed with our suppliers. So you can see now from the screen the huge increases in the components we will require. 50% glass increase, well, that's an obvious fact, but that extra leaf is in fact the higher value product, which is a coated glass, very often soft coat, and 100% approximately on all other components. Spacer bar, corner keys, desiccant gas, primary and secondary sealant, again the figures are approximate based on cavity width. And then we've got to deal with the extra manufacturing time. 50% more racking required after the additional cutting. More racks, more space. 100% more space of production and desiccant filling. Gas, primary and secondary sealant. 60% more storage will be needed in dispatch based on a 44mm IGU. Then we come to the real killer. The example on screen is based on a customer last week who had approximately 100 28mm double glazed units weighing 980 kilos approximately. They were delivered on a typical 1200 kilo payload sprinter type vehicle. If you manufacture those as 44mm triple glazing with 3 leaves of 4mm, they would weigh approximately 1500 kilos. To illustrate that further, stack the 100 double glazed units back to back with transport pads, 3100 long. Stack 100 44mm units in line and they would be 4700 long. To really push that home to you and the weight increase, on the screen you'll see a typical example of a bifold patio door size 800 by 2100. DGU, 2 bits of 4mm, approximately 33 kilos. TGU with 3 leaves of 4mm, a whopping 50.4 kilos approximately. So we as a manufacturer therefore faced with the prospect of increased labour, raw materials, plant, manufacturing time, logistics, finances, health and safety issues, amongst other things. Over the last 20 years, I've seen many advances in the industry, but I believe this is the most fundamental game changer, the biggest impact being on the IGU producer. I believe the industry will depend on IGU manufacturers like ourselves and must recognise the need for accurate pricing of the end product. There must be enough profitability in the production of triple glazing to enable IGU manufacturers to cope with the supply and demand they will face. Using the triple glazing banner as a lead generator is fine. if it doesn't undermine and undervalue the product. Ecoglass are ready to embrace any new product that benefits our customers, and triple glazing is one. But extended lead times and increased prices on product have to be a reality that's accepted. Order triple for a reason and not for a buzzword. Thank you all very much.